How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman, and we are back with another Murdaugh series, this 22nd episode. And this is going to be the lengthiest podcast today. I'm wrapping up Alex Murdaugh's testimony with this episode, so while this episode is lengthy at some 3+ hours, it's absolutely pertinent that you hear it. And as has been the practice with all the episodes I've done in this Murdaugh series, at certain points during the testimony, I'll break in and discuss those points throughout the podcast. Now, let's get into it. And the last time that we left you, Alec was on that stand and Creighton Waters was diving in on the biggest lie of all. The fact that Alex lied to the police regarding being at those kennels. He played the video in which Alec was in the background of a Snapchat his son Paul was taking, and Alec's voice very distinct, fussing at one of the dogs over having a chicken in his mouth. So we're going to pick up at that point in the testimony. And in this first clip, you're going to hear Prosecutor Waters further questioning the fact that he lied about being at those kennels, which, remember, this is probably the biggest key in the case because it places him at that murder scene just prior to his son and wife being killed. Waters also hammers down on his claim of movement just after discovering Paul and Maggie tragically murdered. And it is a battle of wits. And here's that first clip.
When you picked up that chicken, was there any blood on it?
I don't believe so.
Did you wash your hands or all?
At that point in time, I don't believe that I did.
And when you say you were there, you said Maggie was nearby you. Is that correct?
Right by me.
Was she messing with the hose at all?
At that time, no, she was not.
Did she mess with it the entire time that you were there, according to your new facts today?
While I was there, she did not touch. She was not fooling with a hose at all.
Right. I'm gonna move this thing along. I'm going to put up on the screen states 519, which is the condensed timeline. If I could have computer input, please. 519. It's the condensed timeline, Mr. Griffin. Thank you. Coming out all right. You see that up there, Mr. Murdoch?
Yes.
All right, I'm on page 5. You see that cell challenge map there?
That's up on my screen?
Yeah.
I do see that.
Would you agree with me that it reflects no cell tower activity on your phone from 6:52 to 9:04?
I do agree with that.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Murdoch. Did you take your phone with you down to the kennels, according to the new facts that you testified to yesterday and today?
I must not have.
You must not have?
If this is accurate, no, sir.
Is that typical for you?
Sure it is. Absolutely.
Okay. Tell me why that's typical.
if and when I'm going. Now, it would be unusual if I was going out for any extended period of time, or if I was going, even on the property, if I was going somewhere for an extended period of time, I would usually have my phone. But for me to go knowing that I'm going to the kennel and coming right back, that's not unusual at all. I mean, you've heard the testimony about the service out there. The service is terrible. You have to be in a particular spot.
All right.
And you have to find a spot.
So the answer is you don't know whether or not you took it down there
I believe that I probably didn't based on this data.
based on this. But unlike your photographic memory about other things, you don't remember whether or not you had your phone on you.
Mr. Waters, I've never claimed to have a photographic memory, but I do not specifically remember if I had my phone that night. I do not dispute it based on this data, and that's not unusual for me.
Just like you don't remember, according to your new story, the last conversation you had with Maggie.
No, I remember having my last conversation with Maggie.
Looking at this screen, you have the map up there. We're on page 6, and it shows you arriving back at Moselle at 6:42. You don't dispute that now, is that correct?
No, that's what this data appears to show.
And looking at the data, moving on to page 7, you have Paul arriving about 7:04. Is that correct? You don't have any reason to dispute that?
Well, that's what it says. He arrives at 4147 Moselle Road, which is the address of the shop. The house is 4157. I believe that Paul actually got there a little bit before that, but I think that's approximately accurate.
Okay.
I think Paul got there a little bit closer to 7 o'clock.
You would agree, though, that's the earliest data point that reflects his presence in Moselle.
If that's what the records show.
You don't dispute that?
I don't dispute that if that's the earliest data point. But again, I believe he got there a little bit earlier. And I tried to look at these records to see if if that could be refuted. And I believe he got there a little closer to 7 or a little bit before 7.
Yeah, that's a good point. You looked at these records a lot before you had your testimony yesterday and today, didn't you, Mr. Murdoch?
I've looked at these records other than the OnStar records that just came when they were provided to me. Sure, I've looked at them.
Okay. Right here, we have some steps on your phone, 29 steps. And then down at the bottom, we have 89 steps. Is that consistent when you and Paul were together on the property?
I mean, sure, we would go to different locations on the property. Sometimes we would get out. Sometimes we wouldn't. We'd get out and walk around. We'd look at stuff. We'd do things. For example, you saw me messing with the tree. There'd be other ones. We may get out and look at a feeder. Maybe other ones we get out and look at hog signs where hogs are rooting. So it would be perfectly consistent with what Paul and I were doing that day.
And 8:05 to 8:09, would you agree that that's the last steps recorded on your phone before 9:02 when you become a very busy bee?
If that's what these records show, I see I took steps. These records show I took steps between 8:05 and 8:09.
All right. So would you concede then that you're at the house around 8:09?
I would have thought so, yes.
Okay. And you said Paul was already back at that point?
No, I said just the opposite.
When did he get there?
All right. You talking about
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa Welcome Bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
When I left the shop and went to the house, when Maggie was there,
Yes, before you ate dinner.
no, as I said earlier, Paul and I were at the shop. Maggie got home. I left Paul at the shop, and I went to the house. I think you were saying that I said I met Paul at the house, and that's incorrect.
Paul was still down at the shop when you were at the house, correct?
When I first went to the house, Paul was still at the shop, I believe.
All right. And was Maggie there when you arrived at the house?
Yes, I believe she was.
All right. And 809 is the last steps that you have on this phone before 902, correct?
That's what the data shows.
Looking now at page 15. I'm sorry, page 14. Your steps that you say when you got to the house is 809 and Paul was still down at the shop. But don't these records reflect that Paul is pinging with GPS data at the house at 808?
This record appears to show Paul at the house at 8:08.
All right. So those records don't fit with your new story that you testified yesterday and today. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe even right now, Mr. Waters, that that's right. I'm not saying what you're doing is you're taking 809 and saying that I'm at the house. And I mean, that may or may not be right. But what I'm saying is that when Maggie came through, I left, and I believe that Paul stayed at the shop. Now, did Paul come right behind me? I'm not sure. But when I left him, I believe that when I left to go to the house, I believe that Paul stayed at the shop for a minute.
When you got to the house, did you put your phone down?
I'm sure I did.
Did you put it in the car, in the Suburban?
Did I put it in the Suburban?
When you got back to the house, did you put it in the Suburban? Was the Suburban parked out front?
The Suburban would have been parked wherever I parked it.
Which is where?
I believe on the side.
Okay. And did you put your phone in the Suburban?
At that time? No, I did not.
Where'd you put it?
I'm not sure where I put it.
You're not sure about that either, huh?
No, I'm not sure. When I went in the house, I'm not sure where I put my phone. I would think that I put it down somewhere, probably by the couch.
Didn't you testify yesterday when you were being asked by your lawyer about that pause at Almeda when you were leaving, and you had a very specific recollection of your phone had fallen down in the crevice and you had to pick it up and get it out? You remember testifying to that?
I do.
But you don't remember what you did with your phone when you got back at this point, huh?
I mean, Mr. Ward, those are two distinct, different things. I'm coming in the house and I put my phone down. I don't have a routine spot that I put it in right on this corner or right there. You know, yeah. I would assume that when I went in the house, I put it somewhere either on the table. You go by, go into the couch. I may have taken it to the bathroom. When I took a shower, it may have taken me a few minutes to go to the shower, so I can't tell you exactly where I put it.
That console story is an awful specific recollection when you need it to try to make the new story that this jury's hearing and everyone's hearing yesterday and today with the data, correct? But you're awful fuzzy on far more important things, aren't you, Mr. Murdoch?
Which question? Here, I'll answer the first one first. No, I don't believe that's convenient, and I disagree with your categorization of the description.
All right. But you remember the console story, but you don't remember where you put your phone, whether or not you took it down to the kennels, whether it was in the, you put it in the Suburban. Don't remember any of that, but dadgummit, you remember that console story, correct?
Well, I don't remember the console story, but, you know, in that Suburban, and it's not the first time that it happened, but when that phone got down there, you had to go to great efforts to get it out, and you couldn't just reach over there and get it out.
Mm-hmm. All right. You say when you got to the house that Maggie was already there?
Yes.
Okay. And we saw your last steps were at 8:09.
Well, that's what you saw when this data recorded my last steps. But as you heard this testimony too, Mr. Waters, that's not a precise. That's not a precise. You heard the testimony. You know what it is.
Well, how did you get back to the house? Remind us.
From the shop?
Yeah.
I went in a white pickup truck.
Went in the white pickup truck? Okay. And when you got into the house, where did you go?
We've already discussed this. I took a shower. Whether I did things for a moment before I went to the shower, I'm sure I talked to Maggie because she'd been gone. And if she came through the kennel, which I believe she did, we only talked briefly, so I would have talked to her, but I would have quickly gone to take a shower.
Okay. Going over to page 16, you would agree with me that the data reflects Maggie started logging steps and her phone disconnecting from the Mercedes around 8:17, correct?
I agree. At 8:17, her phone ends connection to her Mercedes.
And starts logging steps.
I don't see that, but I don't dispute it.
Well, you see the purple line talking about it disconnecting from the Mercedes.
I do see. I see where you're talking about. So yeah, I see it. 8:17, her phone starts logging steps. I agree with that.
Okay. So would you concede that appears to be when she arrived?
No, I don't believe that's when she arrived. I believe that. I mean, it was very normal for Maggie when she's driving to jump out of the car, run inside, go to the bathroom, do things, and either send me or Paul or go back or Buster or go back to her car herself and unplug her phone. So, I mean, I agree that's when her phone's unplugged, but I believe that Maggie got to the house a little bit before that. That's the whole reason why Paul and I went to the house.
Okay. But you're saying Paul arrived after Maggie. Is that what you're saying? At the house.
I believe so. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's what I recall. And Paul arrived at the house after I arrived at the house, I believe. And if Paul got to the house around about that same time, he wasn't inside with Maggie and I when I went to get to the shower.
So you say if Paul he wasn't inside with Maggie and you? Is that what you said? Mr. Murdoch, is that what you said?
Sir?
You said if Paul got to the house prior to that, he wasn't inside with you and Maggie? Is that what you said?
I'm saying he was not inside when I went to get in the shower.
Okay. But again, looking back at this data point, 8:08, we see a little blue dot right there in the middle of the house, don't we?
Yeah, that's what these records show.
Okay.
And it also shows that circle that folks testified to what the range of what it could be within. So, I mean, it clearly could be.
Look at that circle. Look at what's right in the middle of that circle. Almost like somebody drew a circle around the house, don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. But also in that circle is where you would park a truck if you pulled up.
All right.
So, and I'm not saying that he wasn't in the house at some point in time there. But when I went to get in the shower, he wasn't in the house. And he very easily could have been there and been parked in the yard.
All right.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
You agree at the bottom of page 16 that about 8:30 Maggie starts tracking steps again on her phone?
Yes, sir. That's what the data shows.
Oops, hit the wrong button. And you would agree with me that about 8:38, Paul's phone shows him back up at the kennels.
Well, yes, sir. I agree that at 8:38, let me see which one. It's hard for me to figure out which one of these rings, but at 8:38, it shows Paul in whichever one of those rings is 56 meters wide. And I have no reason to believe he wasn't at the kennel.
Right. And then 8:44:55, we've already gone through this, but that's the kennel video, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you would agree with me that it lasts about 50 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir, I agree with that.
And you would agree with me, moving on to page 19, that both Maggie and Paul's phones locked for the final time around 8:49.
That's what the data shows.
After that, you agree that Maggie's phone around 8:53 shows some steps being taken?
That's what the data shows, yes, sir.
Data doesn't show who's carrying it, but that's what it shows. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And then you would agree with me that from 9:02 to 9:06, your phone finally comes to life and starts showing a lot of steps.
I do agree with that.
What were you doing?
I was getting ready to go to my mom's house.
Getting ready to go? I thought you took a shower already. You were just laying down on the couch. What all you need to do to get ready to go to your mom's house?
I mean, there wasn't anything to get ready in that aspect,
Wasn't
but
anything to get ready,
I was
was it?
getting ready to go. I was preparing to leave.
Doing what?
I don't know if I got up, went to the bathroom. I don't know. I can't tell you exactly what I was doing.
And that's far more steps in a shorter time period than any time prior, as you've seen from the testimony in this case. So what were you so busy doing?
That's
Going to the bathroom?
no, I don't think that I
Did you get on a treadmill?
went to the bathroom. No, I didn't get on a treadmill.
Jogging place?
No, I didn't jog in
Jumping
place.
jacks?
No, sir, I did not do jumping jacks.
What were you doing, Mr. Murdoch, for those 4 minutes?
Preparing to leave for my mom's house.
What? What does that mean? I mean, you're in the front room on that couch where you say you laid down. The Suburban's just right outside. What all are you doing?
I don't know if I got up and went to my room, went to the gun room, went back in the...
Doing what? You've been so clear in your new story about everything. What were you doing during these 4 minutes?
I disagree with your assertion about every detail. I don't recall. I know that I was getting up and I was leaving. I was going to check on my mom. But specifically what I was doing, I don't know.
Okay.
I know what I wasn't doing, Mr. Waters, and what I wasn't doing is doing anything, as I believe you've implied, that I was cleaning off or washing off guns or putting guns in a raincoat, and I can promise you that I wasn't doing any of that.
Okay. Also, during this 4 minutes where you've got 283 steps, not only are you moving around a lot, but you're making a ton of phone calls. Because in that same time period, you see this red line right here, where over that 4 minute period, all those steps were taken? That's also when you're calling, making all these phone calls, isn't it, Mr. Murdoch?
Well, I made the
So
phone
when you're
calls.
in this place and making phone calls, is that what you're doing?
You're allowed to answer before Mr. Waters steps on him again with another question. Please. Thank you.
You were making all these phone calls while you were taking all these steps. Would you concede that? Where you don't remember what you were doing?
Well, I was making phone calls, and that's shown here. At 9:05, I called my dad. You know, I don't know that I was taking steps like you're saying I'm taking steps. I heard the same testimony you heard, Mr. Waters, and, you know, steps can be recorded any number of ways. I don't have a specific recollection of walking around. I don't know if I was hitting my phone like the guy showed or doing whatever that makes steps. But, you know.
So you were hitting your phone like that while you were making all these phone calls?
Hang on, no, sir. What I'm saying, Mr. Waters, I don't know that. I'm just giving you an example. You're saying that I'm running around taking these steps, and while I'm doing that, I'm making telephone calls. What I will agree with is that this data shows that there was 283 steps recorded on my phone. Mm-hmm. And sometime during that period, I made certain phone calls.
Okay. All right. So not only for whatever it is recording steps, but you're also making a ton of phone calls, including missed calls to Maggie, who is 1,100 feet away, supposedly.
You're using the term a ton of phone calls.
Yeah.
What I agree is that I made the phone calls that are listed on these call data records, which, you know, are very normal phone calls for me.
Mm-hmm. Do you know why so many phone calls were missing from the log around this relevant time period when law enforcement downloaded your phone on June 10th?
From my phone?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Did you delete them, Mr. Murdoch?
Not intentionally.
Just around the time of June 7th, all these calls were missing, but you had nothing to do with that between June 7th and June 10th.
No, sir, I did not. Mm-hmm. And I did not delete phone calls from my phone. Mr. Waters, one of the most important things in this whole thing for me has been getting this data that I believe would exist. Phone calls and phone records would be part of that. I've been in enough civil cases and used phone records enough times to know that you delete a phone call from your phone, it doesn't disappear. So I can tell you, this jury, and everybody who's listening that I did not intentionally delete phone calls from my phone.
Yeah, because you started talking about you're a former prosecutor, correct? And former lawyer doing civil cases. We went through that yesterday. And boy, you're busy bee on that phone right out of the gate at 9:02, right? Objections overruled.
Am I a busy bee?
Yeah.
I am using my telephone at, I think I call at 9:05, I start and call my dad, and I agree that I made other phone calls.
And one of the first things you start talking about with law enforcement is these calls that you made to Maggie. Correct? You recall that from your first statement to law enforcement?
One of the first things that I said to law enforcement?
Yeah, that's one of the things you talk about. I'm talking about with your interview with Special Agent Dave Owen.
I don't remember that being the first thing we talked about, but
first things.
If Mr. Owens asked me about it, then I...
No, you brought it up, didn't you?
I did.
You don't recall?
No, I don't recall.
Would you dispute me if I said you brought it up?
That I brought up what? Brought up what?
Phone, Mr. Murdoch, your phone.
Phone calls to Maggie?
Yes.
That I brought up phone calls to Maggie to David Owens.
I'm asking you, is that one of the things that you talked about in your first interview with Dave Owen? That you pulled out your phone and started looking at it, that you brought that up? Do you recall that?
Well, but that's not what you asked, Mr. Owens. You asked me, was that the first thing that I talked to him about? And that was the discrepancy. I certainly don't dispute that Mr. Owens and I talked.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
About phone calls.
Yeah.
But that's not what you said, so just to be clear.
Well, the real reason, Mr. Murdoch, is that you as a lawyer and prosecutor are up at 9:02, finally having your phone in your hand, moving around and making all these phone calls to manufacture an alibi. Is that not true?
That's absolutely incorrect.
So that's just another circumstance and coincidence in this particular case. right around the time that you lied to law enforcement about maybe one of the most important facts in the case.
Comment before the question.
It is an absolute fact that I am not manufacturing an alibi, as you say.
How do you remember so much detail about everything else, but you don't remember what you were specifically doing to generate 283 steps while you're making all these phone calls in the same 4-minute period?
I remember unequivocally, without any doubt, with as clear a mind as I could have at any time, that I never manufactured any alibi in any way, shape, or form, because I did not and would not hurt my wife and my child.
So why
So
can't
I
you
know
remember
for a
what you were
fact
doing?
that I never, ever, ever created an alibi.
Why don't you remember what you were doing when you were so busy for this 4-minute critical period?
I do remember what I was doing.
Other than I was getting ready to go.
Well, that's because that's what I was doing.
Okay. Well, let's keep going. You made those calls to Maggie in that 4-minute period. You had just seen them a few minutes ago when you say you went down there and came right back. Why didn't you just take that quick little left 1,100 yards away and stop by? See why they didn't answer the call. You're obviously wanting to get in touch with them. Why didn't you go down to the kennels that were so close by?
There was no reason to. I mean,
making multiple missed calls to Maggie, and she's so close. And there's a driveway right there. Why do you not just go down there and say, hey, guys, I'm heading over there?
It wasn't important to do that. Me making those phone calls is simply me letting, I believe I called Maggie and I called Paul, but that's simply me just letting them know that I'm leaving for a minute, I'll be back. The fact that they don't answer is not unusual at all. Now, it is odd, it is unusual that they never call me back. But at that moment, the fact that there's a missed call when I know they're on the property, I mean, that doesn't even register at all. That's perfectly normal to try to call somebody who's on the property and not be able to get them. And as far as not going down there, there was no sense of urgency. Maggie was with Paul. You know, she should be as safe as she could be.
Yeah, she should. Did you talk with Maggie about going to Almeda when you were at the kennels?
No, I don't believe I did.
Did you talk with Maggie about going to Almeda during supper?
I know that we had talked about it. I don't believe we talked about it at supper, but we may have. I know that I had talked about that I was going to go over there. And then I decided that I wasn't going to go over there. So
what was your conversation at supper? Tell me specifically, if you could, please. About going to Almeda.
I can't tell you that we specifically talked about it. The only thing that I can tell you we specifically talked about at supper was Paul. All
right. And what was the conversation?
Maggie was just concerned. Paul had been having, for a young person, Paul had been having high blood pressure. And he's very resistant to go to the doctor. And this has been going on for a little while, but lately Paul's feet have swollen. And for a 22-year-old to have having swollen feet concerned both of us, and it particularly concerned Maggie. And we talked about that.
Okay. Did y'all talk about Mr. Randolph at all?
I'm sure we did.
Do you remember that group text coming in about whether or not anybody was going to go see Mr. Randolph at the hospital the next day?
Do I remember it coming in?
Yeah.
I don't remember it coming in,
Because you didn't read it till the next day. But
I've seen the data.
why didn't you? Did you ever text the group and say you were going to Almeda at all?
No.
Did you and Maggie ever specifically discuss her going along with you to Almeda?
I don't believe that we did. I know that there was a point in time where I said Maggie might go, but it's highly unusual for Maggie to go and visit just my mom. That whole situation, it made Maggie sad, and she didn't like to go. So I don't believe that we did, but I do acknowledge that at some point I said she might go for some reason.
You told law enforcement on multiple occasions that, first of all, Maggie was planning to stay at Edisto the night of June 7th, correct?
I did say that.
All right. And you also said that you came to find out that she came home of her own accord, correct? You told that to law enforcement. Is that true?
She did come home of her own accord.
That she decided on her own to come home because she was worried about you. Isn't that what you said?
I did say that, and I believe that to be the case.
All right. But since despite what you told law enforcement, we've since seen the text that you actually called her and asked her to come home on the night of June 7th.
No, sir, that's not correct.
That's not correct?
No, sir, that's absolutely not correct.
All right. So you heard your sister-in-law, Marion, testify to just that fact of a conversation she had with Maggie, but you're saying that's not true?
I don't believe that's what Marion said.
All right. And your defense put in this exhibit, Exhibit 107, where Maggie texted Blanca and said, Alec wants me to come home.
I've seen that. I agree with that.
Is that it up on the screen? Oh, I've got the wrong input here. I'll just hold it up. You've seen this text?
I have seen that. Mr. Waters, the only dispute I have with what you're saying is you're saying that I called Maggie and wanted her to come home. I always wanted Maggie to come home, and I would have talked to Maggie about coming home before she ever left to go to Charleston and to Edisto. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you this, and I didn't realize this at the time, but I realize it now, that Maggie was already undecided about, now I didn't know this, but Maggie was already undecided about staying at Edisto. I can promise you that, because Bubba and Grady were in their kennels, as y'all well know, that night. That day, if Maggie was certain that she was spending the night at Edisto, at a minimum, Bubba would have been with her.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And probably both dogs would have been with her. It was very unusual for her to spend the night anywhere without one of us or those dogs. So that tells me that when she left that morning, she was already seriously thinking about coming back.
So you're saying that you never called her and had a conversation that day asking her to come home specifically on the night of June 7th, 2021?
Maggie and I had a couple of phone conversations that day. What I'm telling you is that before she left, no, I don't believe we had a phone call about that. We may have discussed it during the phone call, but I didn't make a phone call to her to ask her to come home. I had already told her I wanted her to come home. I always wanted her to come home. You heard Marion say that too, that I always wanted Maggie with me.
Maggie thought enough of it to talk about it with Marion, didn't she?
The fact that I wanted her to come home?
Correct.
Well, sure. I mean, that's what Marion said.
So you're denying that you called Maggie and specifically asked her to come home that night?
I didn't make a phone call to Maggie to ask her to come home that night. I asked Maggie to come home long before she ever left. And I probably asked her again each time I talked to her, but I didn't make the phone call specifically for that, as you're saying. And to be clear, I'm certain that if Maggie was certain that she was spending the night, Bubba would have been with her, and probably Grady.
All right. Why did you tell law enforcement, though, that you found out after the fact that Maggie wanted to come home because she was concerned about you? Why did you phrase it that way if what you're saying to the jury now was accurate? Why would you phrase it that way?
Because I believe that to be the case.
That you found out afterwards, but now you're saying you knew.
No, I'm saying I found out afterwards why she came home, Mr. Waters. Okay. And she came home because she was worried about me. So I'm going to be clear about that. I did not learn that until I think the day after she got killed.
But you're saying that you found out that after the fact, but you're telling this jury that you knew the things that you just said about her wanting to come home. And you were unaware of what Marion would say at that point either.
No, I'm saying at that time, I had not thought about Bubba and Grady. Since that time, I've thought about that. I'm certain of that. At the time, I thought Maggie was staying at Edisto. All right? She was going to Edisto to meet the people, to do the work. Maggie loved to stay at Edisto. There's no doubt about that. It would not be unusual at all for her to stay at Edisto. But just like every other time, I had already asked her, please come back, come back. Always wanted her to stay with me. Always. But I did not learn about, and Maggie even texted me, I'll see you in a few hours. But I did not know why she decided to come back until later, is what I'm saying. And I learned it from Blanca. Blanca actually showed me the text that she sent her talking about being worried about me.
You would agree with me that you sent a text to Maggie at 9:08:58 while in motion in the Suburban, as reflected by the data?
I do. Which was because I couldn't reach them by the telephone, and I wanted them to know where I was.
Okay.
Which is what we do.
And you got to Almeda around 9:22?
I believe that's correct.
I can go down to it.
No, I don't have any reason to dispute that.
Made some more phone calls along the way?
I did make more phone calls along the way while I was riding.
Called Chris Wilson?
I did call Chris Wilson.
Had a short conversation with him? Is that right?
I did have a conversation for however long the record show.
About 131 seconds. Does that sound about right?
If that's what the record show, 2 minutes.
Called your brother, John Marvin for about 106 seconds, including connection time. Does that sound about right?
That does sound about right.
Arrived at 9:22. Does that sound about right?
It does.
And then at 9:24, you call, that's the landline at Almeda, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then you went inside, is that right?
Yeah, that's
Talked
right.
to Miss Shelley.
That's right. I called the house phone to get Shelley to let me in.
And when you were asked by law enforcement how long you were at your mother's house, you said 45 minutes to an hour. Wasn't that correct?
I think I said a couple of different things, but I think at one time I did say that. But, you know, routinely through this thing, I kept saying, you know, when you get this data, you'll see exactly. When you look at my phone, you'll see exactly. When you do, you know, so, you know, me giving the times was always given with the thought that, okay, that there's OnStar out there, there's whatever.
But when you had a conversation with Miss Shelley after the fact, you actually asked her to say that you were there longer than 20 minutes.
You know, I heard Shelley's testimony. I believe Shelley to be a good person. I wasn't trying to influence Shelley on any particular length of time because at the beginning of this, I believed that data would show what data would show. And for me to tell her to say something when my OnStar is going to show something different just doesn't make any sense. So, you know, I can't answer that. What my recollection is that I told Shelley that law enforcement would be talking to her. We may have discussed how long I was there. At that point in time, if I thought I was there 45 minutes, I may have said I was here 45 minutes, but, you know, I can't tell you.
All right. And that's the same thing that Blanca testified to, that you talked to her about the clothes that you were wearing. It made her uncomfortable, correct?
Ask that question again.
It's similar to your conversation with Blanca that she testified about when you talked to her about the clothes that you were supposedly wearing.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Her feel uncomfortable. Do you remember that testimony, sir?
What's similar to that?
Well, that you're talking to both of these individuals about their testimony in a manner that's inconsistent with what they know.
No, I don't think your assertion is accurate. You have to understand this. On August the 11th, when I went to meet with David Owens, and in that, David Owens asked me about, he showed me that Snapchat and asked me about clothes that I had on. And shortly after that, the next time I was with Blanca, I asked Blanca about those clothes because David Owens had asked me about them and was made an issue about it. And so I checked with Blanca to see what I specifically asked Blanca, and it was an issue to me. So I got Blanca and I said, I need you to sit down and talk with me about this. This is important. Do you remember my clothes when you came to Moselle that day? And she remembered exactly what she testified to. She remembered that my pants were there. She wasn't sure if the shirt was there. At that time, I think she actually thought the shirt was there, but she was clear that she wasn't sure about that. No, she wasn't unsure, but she didn't remember, but assumed that it was. So that was the conversation and why I was asking Blanca.
Well, again, you're very specific about your memories of that conversation. Is that correct, Mr. Murdoch?
You dang right. I'm consistent about that, because a very short time before that, David Owens is asking me questions and telling me I'm a suspect in the murder of my wife and my child, and asking me about my clothes. You dang right it was important.
It was important, right.
And you dang right I remember why I went to her and for what reason.
Because the only thing you're concerned about is yourself. You're not concerned about giving accurate information to law enforcement, correct? What's the reason for that, Mr. Murdoch? Why don't you want to give accurate information to law enforcement? Why do you want to talk to these women who both are employed by you or your family and try to influence what they are going to say?
I did want to give law enforcement accurate information. I told a lie about being down there, and I got myself wed to that. But I wanted to give them as much. I knew that I hadn't done this, and I wanted to give them as much accurate information as I could. But the reason I went to Blanca is specifically because David Owens talking to me on August the 11th.
Okay. You can see that you're underway about 9:42, heading back.
I
9:42 to 9:43.
I do.
Turned on Moselle about 10:01.
Turned into Moselle at 10:01.
Yeah. Sorry.
It looks to me like I turned into Moselle at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock on the dot, sorry.
Yes, sir.
At the house at 10:05.
Yes, sir.
And then that's when you went back to the kennels after you came back from Almeda, correct?
I went to the kennels after I went to the house. I went from Almeda to the house to the kennels.
And we got to the scene. You got out of the car, according to what you told law enforcement repeatedly, and went and checked the bodies, correct? Before you called 911. Is that correct?
No, sir, that's not correct.
You're saying you didn't say that to law enforcement?
I don't know what I said to law enforcement, Mr. Waters, but I can tell you this. I pulled up, and I saw Mags and Paw. I jumped out of that car. I know that I went back to my car, and I called 911 as quickly as I could. That point in time, when I got on the phone, then is when I went to them and did the things that I did. So, what you're saying is not accurate.
You're saying that you didn't say very specifically to law enforcement that you went to them prior to calling 911.
When?
After you got out of the car, you told law enforcement repeatedly that you went over and checked the bodies before you called 911.
No, I don't. If I did say that, I don't believe that's accurate. Did I check Maggie and Paul before I called 911?
Correct.
No, sir. That's not accurate. At least that's not what I remember.
That's not what you remember saying, or that's not what you say now happened?
No, that's not what I believe happened.
Okay, but you don't deny that's what you said.
Did I check Maggie and Paul before I called 911?
Correct.
I don't believe that's what I said. Now, I know I checked them, but I don't believe I checked them before I called 911. Because I can pretty well remember vividly when I checked Paw, I was already on the phone with 911.
Looking at this data, to show the vehicle parking at 10:05 and 55 seconds.
Yes, sir.
And 10:05:57, the Suburban arrives at the kennels. You agree with that?
I'm sorry, say that again, Mr. Waters.
At 10:05:57, it shows the Suburban arriving at the kennels.
Okay. Okay.
The 911 call was at 10:06:14,
Okay.
just about 20 seconds later. You agree with that?
I think that sounds right. Yes, sir. I mean, that makes sense.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
But that goes back to what I'm saying is I pulled up I saw them, and I know I jumped out of my car. But I believe that before I checked them, in fact, I'm almost certain that then I went back and I got that's when I went and got my phone and I called 911.
Okay.
And then after I called 911, there was a little while where there wasn't, I don't think there was anything going on. And I believe that is the time period that I went and checked on them.
I don't want to belabor this point, but that what you're saying here today, now that we have this data, that's not exactly how you expressed it to law enforcement in your prior statements. Is that correct?
No, sir, I disagree with that.
Okay.
I totally disagree with that, Mr. Waters. Will you point to what you're talking about?
All right, sir. What the hell's going on? All right, Mr. Murdoch, state your full name for me, please.
Richard Alexander Murdoch.
And spell your last name so it be correct.
Murdaugh.
All right. And you go by Alex?
Yes, sir.
And date of birth, Mr. Murdoch?
May 27th, 1968.
I'll get a phone number for you.
803-942-1227.
And so what was your name?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. As I stated, I'm David Owen in Lower Rutland with Collin County. I'm in SLED. I hate to have to do this.
I understand.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
So you don't have any problem with it.
So just start at the top. Take your time.
Like when I came back here, I mean, I pulled up and I could see him, and I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. And my boy over there, I could see it was. I could see his brain. And I ran over to Maggie. Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife, and I could see.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them. And, I called 911, pretty much right away, and she was very good. I talked to her. I told her I was going to get off the phone to call some family. I did that.
What family members did you call him?
I called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John. And I tried to call a little boy, a real good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't get him.
The person you didn't name, that was Rogan, the little boy right around the corner. Is that who you're talking about?
That's correct. But going back to your question, that's the way I remember it, what I said right there. And your question about did I do these things before I called 911, that's not what I said then, and that's not what I remember now.
Okay. So you're saying now that you went out, you checked, you came back, got your phone, and that's when you called 911?
I'm not saying that now, Mr. Woods. I am saying that now, but to me, that's what I said then. I mean, I told her I called 911 right away. There was no time to do the things that I'm talking about doing in the time between getting there and calling 911.
When you talked about calling Rogan, and you said that he lived right around the corner, correct?
That's correct.
All right. But Rogan wasn't staying there at the time. That's the whole reason that Cash was at your kennel, right? You knew that.
Well, Rogan was staying in Beaufort a lot, but he was home a lot too. I didn't know where Rogan was on a daily basis.
About keeping his dog Cash at the kennels when he was staying with his girlfriend and working down in Beaufort?
Yes, he had asked me that. But I mean, that had been some time before. I didn't know. You're making a big deal about this, Mr. Waters, but that particular night, I didn't have a clue where Rogan was staying or not staying. I was trying to find somebody to come out there with me. I'd called Randy, I'd called John, and Rogan was the next best alternative.
Okay.
And Rogan is so close. I mean, Rogan, of all these kids that you've heard, Rogan, Gibson, Roro is like a Rogan. You prefer when I call him Rogan, is truly like a son to Maggie and I. And he was such a good friend of Buster, and he was such a good friend of Paul. And you've been through everything I have. You'll see that 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to this, I ran out of gas when Bus and Paw weren't home. And Rogan's the person that I called to bring me gas.
Okay. Nobody's disputing any that Rogan would have helped you. Let me keep playing this.
Around Paul when you walked up.
Blood.
Anything else?
I mean, there were some body things, yes, sir.
I mean, like any other evidence. I know you said the phone fell out of the pocket, but did you see anything else that didn't belong or shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No, sir, not. No, sir.
How about Maggie?
No, sir.
You didn't see anything around now? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them, and Maggie's a dog lover. And she fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
You just testified that in the wake of this, you didn't know what you said to law enforcement. That was what you just said?
No, I mean, I know a lot of what I said to law enforcement, but there's a lot of things in looking back at this video for one, the 911 call for one. I mean, there's a lot of things that I didn't remember.
Okay. But right then and there, just not long into this interview, you made a conscious decision to lie right there.
Play that again?
You said, I was at the house.
And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house. I left the house.
Play.
You want me to back it up some more?
Well,
yeah, we can keep listening to it.
Anything around now? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them, and Maggie's a dog lover. She fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
You want to hear it again?
No, sir, but I don't
So you made a conscious decision to lie right there, this early into an interview, sitting in the front seat, correct?
I don't believe so.
You didn't make a conscious decision to lie?
I don't believe that. I don't believe that was lying at that point.
Okay. Tell me why not.
Because Maggie had gone to the kennels and I was at the house.
Okay. So you think you were that was not a lie at that point?
I don't believe so. At
what point did you decide to lie?
I'm not sure, but it was in that.
It was in this interview?
I believe that it was.
Okay. Was this interview where you're sitting in the front seat, correct?
It is.
You're not in custody, correct?
I'm not in custody.
They're giving you water, letting you chew tobacco, treating you politely, correct?
They were treating me very politely.
So what was it that clicked? So you said in this interview that it clicked that I'm going to lie about the most important fact that I know?
I'm not sure exactly when in it that I decided to lie, but I believe it was during this interview. I believe all those things that I talked about, those things that had gone on, the things that people had said to me about don't talk to anybody without a lawyer. My partners all told me that, or a lot of my partners told me that. My dear friend, Chief Alexander, was one who said that. I overheard, I believe it was Sheriff Hill, I'm not positive, I overheard him tell, I believe Mark Ball or Gray Holmes, don't let him talk to anybody without a lawyer. And what I believe is that based on my distrust of SLED and getting in that interview, and I'm not positive about this, but I believe when he asked me, about my relationship with my wife and my son, I believe that's when I decided to lie.
You
but
also
I'm not
left
positive.
out when you had the GSR too, because that's what you testified to yesterday.
That certainly contributed.
And your dope paranoia too. You said that as well, correct?
Well, those things are what triggered the paranoia that started as my addiction evolved.
Right. So you're an experienced lawyer and you've been a prosecutor, and you took the advice of your law partners that you should have a lawyer there, as you read that as, oh, I should lie.
No, that's not an accurate.
Because that's not what that means, is it, Mr. Murdoch?
That's not an accurate statement, what you just said, Mr. Waters.
I just repeated what you just said. You said it was one of the factors was your law partners, and now you're blaming Sheriff Hill and Greg Alexander told you that you needed a lawyer before you talked to police, and you took that somehow as meaning I need to lie?
No.
As a lawyer and a prosecutor?
No, that's what you said, Mr. Waters. But
how am I mischaracterizing it from your perspective, Mr. Murdoch?
Because
I think isn't that what you heard? Isn't that what you just said? Excuse me.
No, sir. That's not what I said.
All right, say it again.
I believe those guys were trying to help me. I believe they cared about me. I believe they thought that I was in a condition such that I shouldn't talk to anybody. I mean, those guys had to prop me up, help me get myself together just to be able to go talk to David Owens. I mean, they were trying to help me. But before that, that was just one of the many things that I believe led to that situation sitting in there where those paranoid thoughts came to me. Them talking about not talking to anybody without a lawyer, Brian Varnado, checking my hands, the fact that I got a pocket full of pills in my pocket. I was the person who found Maggie and Paul. My distrust for SLED. All of those factors combined and made me decide to lie. I also know him asking me about Maggie and Paul contributed to that paranoia. All I'm saying is I'm not disputing that I lied. I'm just saying at this point, you're saying I made a conscious decision to lie here, and I'm saying I don't think I made a conscious decision right there.
Okay, so it's lighter?
I believe so.
Had you already had your GSR done at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I had.
And you'd already talked to your law partners and heard Sheriff Hill. Now you're blaming him and blaming Chief Alexander now as well for your lies?
No, sir, Mr. Waters.
Well, you just added that one. You didn't say that yesterday. You just added that one.
Please be given an opportunity to answer the question. Objection.
Can you finish your last answer?
All right. Mr. Waters, I'm not blaming anybody. I accept full responsibility for what I did. What I'm saying is what I believe contributed to me doing that and the reason why I did that. I think those folks were trying to help me. So I don't blame them. I think they were worried about me.
Okay. I don't dispute that, but you're saying you took that advice as I need to lie.
Nah. What you're doing is you're isolating one single
I'm not
thing.
isolating anything. I've mentioned all the factors. You've added some new ones, but I mentioned all the factors that you're blaming for your decision to lie.
That's not what you did. What you asked me is you said I took my partners telling me not to talk to somebody without a lawyer as a reason to lie. And that's an inaccurate statement. That was one of the factors that went into a series, hang on, Mr. Waters, a series of events, all right, that caused me to have.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Paranoid thinking, all right, and then I lied.
All right. But at some point it happened during this interview that you crossed over. You're saying that you came into this interview intending to be fully disclosing to everything, and something happened in this interview that sent you over the edge, and you said, hey, let me lie about the last time I saw my wife and child alive, supposedly, according to me.
I certainly didn't go into that interview, I believe, intending to lie. Mr. Waters, I wasn't capable at that point in time of planning anything or thinking through anything.
So somehow during this interview, all of a sudden those senses came to you to plan and do that.
When I got to thinking in that paranoid way, that normally, as I said, I mean, I could take a deep breath and make it go away. I never had a situation where it lasted more than a matter of seconds. That night, after all those things had happened, it didn't go away in a matter of seconds. And I decided to lie.
Now, are y'all like me at this point? Can you hear it in his voice? Alec is getting more and more nervous on that stand. Now, to be sure, he's practiced what he is going to say regarding why he lied 1,000 times in his head. But the thing he didn't prepare for, could not prepare for, was the hammering that Waters was laying down on him. He was simply getting out-litigated and outsmarted by Waters. Awesome lawyer work right there. So we'll continue.
Those are the clothes that you ultimately gave to Dave Owen. Is that right?
Those are the clothes I gave to David Owens.
At what point did you be able to chuck the pills you say are in your pocket? When did you do that?
When I was in my bedroom.
When you're in the bedroom?
Yes, sir.
Where'd you put them?
I'm not sure where I put them, but ultimately they would have gone in my suitcase.
So that's when you did it? Do you have a specific recollection of that?
No, I don't. I just know that I took them out of my pocket.
If we watch this whole video, you think you could, if we watch the whole thing, you think you can say, okay, that's the moment where my senses came to me and I decided I was going to tell this major lie?
I don't know that it happened like that, but I mean, I may be able to tell you some things that contributed to it. We watched the whole thing.
Well, we've heard that. I just want to be clear, though. At least on this one, at some point during this interview, when you were able to plan your lie about this event, and you made that decision. But it wasn't what we just played. It wasn't yet. It was some point after that.
I don't think that's a lie right there. Is the reason why I don't think that it's occurred before this, because what I'm saying there, I believe to be truthful. And I know this. I know for a fact that when David Owens asked me about my relationship with my wife and my child, I know that played a role in that. And I believe that, and I may be wrong, but I believe that this was before that.
You ever heard the expression, not telling the whole truth is the same as telling a lie?
Sure I have.
That's something you understood as a lawyer and a prosecutor?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Murdoch, state your full name for me, please.
Richard Alexander Murdoch.
And spelling the last name so that you're correct.
Murdaugh.
All right. And you go by Alec?
Yes, sir.
And date of birth, Mr. Murdoch?
May 27th, 1968.
And good phone number for you.
803-942-1227.
And sir, what was your name?
Yeah, Danny.
All right. As I stated, I'm David Owen, and Lower Rutland with Collin County. I'm with SLED. I hate to have to do this.
I understand.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
So you don't have any problem with it.
So.
You hadn't decided to lie right there, correct?
I don't believe so.
You told David Owen that you understood that he had to ask questions and you do what you need to do, correct?
That is what I told him.
Talking about at what point during that interview in the car with Dave Owen that you decided to start lying about the murders of your wife and son. I'm going to pick up this video real quick. Not going to play the whole thing, but I'm going to start from 2 minutes and 9 seconds.
Cool. Just start it out, take your time.
Like when I came back here, I pulled up and I could see him, and I knew something was bad. I ran out. I knew it was really bad. My boy over there, I could see it was. And I could see his brain on. And I ran over to Maggie. Actually, I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over, and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife, and I could see.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both. I tried to I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them. And, I called 911 pretty much right away, and she was very good. I talked to her. I told her I was going to get off the phone to call some family. I did that.
What family members did you call?
I called my brother Randy, and I called my brother John. And I tried to call a little boy, real good friend that's right around the corner from here, but I didn't get him.
What all was around Paul when you walked up?
Blood.
Anything else?
I mean, there was some body things, yes, sir.
I mean, like any other evidence? I know you said the phone fell out of the pocket, but did you see anything else that didn't belong or shouldn't belong or that wasn't part of Paul?
No, sir, not. No, sir.
How about Maggie?
No, sir.
You didn't see anything around them? What made you come out here tonight?
I went to, my mom's a late stage Alzheimer's patient. My dad's in the hospital. My mom gets anxious when she does. I went to check on them, and Maggie's a dog lover. She fools with the dogs. And I knew she'd gone to the kennel. I was at the house.
Just to be clear, you say you hadn't made the conscious decision to start lying about your wife and son's murder right there, correct?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Let's continue on.
Mr. Waters, I can't tell you exactly when that decision occurred.
Okay. You can't describe to the jury the moment you decided to lie about your wife and son's murder.
I can't tell you exactly when that moment occurred.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
All right.
I left the house and went.
You did say earlier that when David Owen asked you about your relationships, that was a trigger point, correct?
Well, that was certainly one of the things that contributed or made me paranoid.
Okay.
Now, there were already things that had gone on that occurred, as I said, that put me in that mindset.
Yeah.
But exactly when I decided to lie about that, I can't tell you.
Mm-hmm. So the things again, you talked about your dope paranoia, the fact they'd taken GSR, and you talked about the advice of your law partners and Sheriff Hill and Greg Alexander, and then you talked about your distrust of SLED somehow from the circumstances and demeanor of this interview right here. Correct?
No, my distrust from SLED didn't arise from this interview. My distrust for SLED arose from a couple of things, and it's really several things. It arose from the way they had been involved in, SLED had been involved in the investigation into Paul's criminal charges, and they had been involved in, there was an issue that had gone on with some rumors about Buster and Paul. They had been involved in that, where, Buster nor Paul had anything to do with what I'm talking about, and SLED never said that, even though they told their lawyer that. They never say that. And there had been another incident where SLED had charged Greg Alexander, my friend in this case. They charged him. And in fact, I thought the agent that was involved in that was David Owen, but the charges against Greg Alexander were so, they were so wrong that my dad and I made a conscious decision, even though he was a career prosecutor, made a decision to go to the courthouse and sit with Greg Alexander while his trial went on, because
It was 10 years ago, right?
it was a while back,
Yeah.
you know.
You don't know if Dave Owen was at SLED 10 years ago.
No, I checked on that, because that night the officer who was involved in that case in bringing clearly manufactured charges against Greg Alexander.
Well, you're saying the night before you sat down for this interview, you were asking somebody about whether or not someone about Greg Alexander 10 years ago in the wake of what had occurred?
Oh, no, I didn't ask anybody.
Okay, so that wasn't what you were discussing when you were sitting in this car.
No, I wasn't discussing that. I'm just telling you that I thought David Owen was the same agent that was involved in that case. Now, I learned later, because I checked on it, I learned later that it was a different David, SLED agent, first name David with a different last name. I learned that later. I'm just saying that was all part of that process going on in my mind.
So you're saying that you're sitting here right now thinking that this Dave Owen and this circumstances and demeanor of this interview, you're thinking that guy had been involved in the prosecution or investigation of your friend 10 years ago?
I did.
Okay, so here's a new one you just mentioned to us, correct?
No, that's not a new one. Okay. That's part of...
The circumstances are new. I mean, that's fairly specific, don't you think?
Well, no, sir.
I mean, the story keeps evolving. Keep going.
No, you asked me about this, Mr. Owen. What I said is part of this whole, Mr. Waters, part of this whole process involved my distrust for SLED. That was a big part of my distrust for SLED.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can all see it on your face in this interview, can't we?
I don't know.
But you said what you just said a little bit ago, that wasn't the lie. That wasn't the conscious decision yet. So let's keep going.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't believe that it was. I don't know exactly when I made the decision to lie about that.
All right.
All right.
Well, if you see it, let me know, okay? Go forward.
To my mom for just a little while. Tried to call her, wouldn't laugh. Texted her, no response. When I got back to the house was obviously nobody was in there, so I figured they're still up here fooling around. Paul was gonna be getting set up to plant. Our sunflower seeds got sprayed and died, and he was refiguring to plant the sunflower seeds. So I came back up here and drove up and saw and go.
Had Maggie and Paul been arguing over anything?
No.
What was their relationship like?
Wonderful.
Wonderful. How about yours and Maggie's?
Wonderful. I mean, I'm sure we had little things here and there, but we had a wonderful marriage, wonderful relationship.
And yours and Paul's relationship?
As good as it could be.
How old was Paul?
22.
So that was the moment, right here, that line of questioning, just asking some very general questions about your relationship. You mentioned that before, didn't you, Mr. Murdoch? Is that the moment right there? Is that the look on your face when you decide to lie about an important fact in your wife and son's murder?
I don't know. As I said, Mr. Waters, I don't know the exact point that I made that decision.
You earlier mentioned that very exchange as somehow triggering you to lie about the last time you saw them alive.
No, I'm not saying that that's what made me lie. I'm saying this whole set of circumstances caused me to be in a state where I had paranoid thoughts.
Okay.
That normally, Mr. Waters, I could take a deep breath and make go away in a second or 2 seconds or 3 seconds at the most. And on this night, I wasn't able to do that. But all of those things that I mentioned, I believe, contributed to that.
Okay. Any more you want to add now, since you keep adding them?
I'd be glad to answer any question you have.
Well, I mean, I'm asking you. I mean, the factors have gone from yesterday to today, and now even after lunch we got some new ones. So anything else you want to add right now as to factors?
Mr. Waters, I don't believe that I've added any new factors. I believe that's what I said yesterday.
All right.
I've explained some of those factors because of your questions, but I don't believe I've added any factors.
Okay. All right, let me move this forward just a little bit.
So most of this was stuff from a couple of them, but not.
Yesterday in great detail about the boat case, which you brought up on the 911 call and to Daniel Green, and then of course in this first interview, correct?
I did mention the boat wreck.
All right, and you described that. Do you remember what you said in this interview about the boat wreck?
Not specifically.
About specifically the other people involved in the boat wreck? You don't remember specifically? Do you remember specifically? I guess you said no.
I remember talking about the boat wreck, and I know that I talked about the boat wreck.
All right. Well, I'm going to play now from 1714.
Any direct threats between any of the people on the boat specifically, but I do think there's been a small amount of yip-yap between a couple of them, but not recently.
Okay.
What was the term you used for that? A small amount of yip-yap?
Yeah, and just to be clear, Mr. Waters, there was never, ever a point in time where I thought that the people that were involved in the boat wreck did this to Paul and Maggie. Okay. I've never thought that.
All right. I never thought that, but it's literally one of the first things that you said out of the 911 call.
Nah, that's not what I said. I never, ever, ever under any point in time believed that those kids that were riding in that boat or their parents or their families. I didn't believe that any of the families, the people that were involved in the boat wreck, had anything to do with hurting Maggie and Paul. Okay. But I can tell you that at that time, and as I sit here today, that I believe that boat wreck is the reason why Paul and Maggie were killed.
Okay.
And I'm certain. So I believe that.
It was random vigilantes, the 5-2 vigilantes, huh?
No, what I believe, Mr. Waters, is I believe that when Paul was charged criminally, there were so many leaks.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Half truths, half reports, half statements, partial information, misrepresentations of Paul that ended up in the media all the time. And when I tell you the social media response that came from that was vile, the things that were said about what they would do to Paul, they were so over the top that nobody would believe anybody would get on social media and do that. But I believe then and I believe today that the wrong person saw and read that.
Okay.
Because I can tell you for a fact that the person or people who did what I saw on June the 7th, they hated Paul Murdoch and they had anger in their heart. And that is the only reason that somebody could be mad at Paw like that and hate him like that.
Gotcha. All right, so we've got now.
But that's why I did then believe it was the boat wreck, and I believe now that the boat wreck had something to do with it.
All right, so we've got random vigilantes because of the boat wreck.
No, I don't know that they're random vigilantes.
Well, you just said it wasn't the family or the kid, or the kids or the family of the other kids in the boat, right? So you're saying it's somebody off of social media, and you don't have any evidence of that, do you? You just believe that, and you're just telling that jury that as you try to explain the lie that you told for the first time yesterday. Isn't that right?
No, sir, that's not right.
It's not right. All right, well, let me ask you a question then. So what you're telling this jury is that it's a random vigilante.
That's your
the 12-year-old, the 12-year-old 5'2" people that just happened to know that Paul and Maggie were both at Moselle on June 7th, that knew that they would be at the kennels alone on June the 7th, that knew that you would not be there, but only between the times of 8:49 and 9:02, that they show up without a weapon, assuming that they're going to find weapons and ammunition there, that they commit this crime during that short time window, and then they travel the same exact route that you do around the same time to Almeda. That's what you're trying to tell this jury?
You got a lot of factors in there, Mr. Waters, all of which I do not agree with, but some of which I do.
You testified earlier that after this happened, well, let me back up just real quick. When you were driving to and from Almeda, why were you in such a hurry? Why are you rolling 70, 80 miles an hour down that dark, beat-up road?
I wasn't in such a hurry.
You weren't?
No, sir.
All right. Show you what's been marked as States 573. See if you recognize this.
I do.
And tell the jury what that is.
It's Mag's car.
Right. And what's it in front of?
The house at Moselle.
And what's between the house and the Mercedes?
The golf cart.
Is that where it was on June the 8th, to your recollection?
No, sir.
Where was it left?
I mean, it was near there, but that's not exactly where it was. No, sir.
Okay, where was it?
Where we would normally park it would be a little bit closer to the sheds. I mean, a little bit closer to the house, to the bushes.
Okay. Your Honor,
when was that photograph taken?
Well, do you recognize when it was taken?
No, I don't recognize. No,
you wouldn't dispute that it was around the time in the aftermath of the murders, would you?
Aftermath being when?
I'm asking you.
A day, a week, an hour?
I wasn't there, Mr. Murdoch. Do you recognize this?
I recognize the car, I recognize the house, and I recognize the golf cart. But that is not, that's not exactly how it would have been that night.
Can you describe to me then where it would be different?
Well, it would be more in line with, first things first is when we drove the golf cart, or when I drove it for sure, and I believe when the others drove it, you would come in and you would go across the little brick walkway that's in front of this. So if I would have come in and gone this way, or I would have come in and gone this way. This is not a place that any of my family would have normally parked it. And so what I'm assuming is this obviously is taken at daytime. Mm-hmm. And what I'm assuming is it was taken when SLED came to the earliest it was taken was when SLED came to the house the next day, which I believe the testimony is in the afternoon. And at this point in time, that golf cart, I would assume, would have been moved several times, but that's not how it was.
Well, where did you leave the golf cart when you got out of it around 8:49?
In the manner in which I just talked about.
Okay. Well, help me out again so I understand. You would have come around this way or that way, but where was it? Where would it end up?
It would have been, in this picture, it's facing to the right.
Oh, I got you.
The night that I drove it, I believe I parked it facing to the left.
I understand.
Would be customarily how I did it. And I believe I did it that way that night.
Okay. Well, all right.
And that is how I would have gotten into it.
All right. That's a very specific memory. Thank you. All right. At this time, the state would offer States 573 and evidence. Well, Judge.
Admit it without objection.
Could I have the Almeda very briefly?
And see, Mr. Waters, you can see in the picture now that you bring this up on the screen, if you look to the right, you can see the actual steps. And just to the left of that would be where the little brick patio starts. So where I would normally park it, you would roll across those bricks, and the end of the golf cart would be just past those. And we all normally parked it that way because the way you charge this golf cart is if you see that back seat that's sitting, you can see the edge. This is a 3-seat golf cart, and you can see the back seat. And a lot of golf carts have the charger that sits on the floor or something. This golf cart has a charger that's plugged in and a part of the golf cart. So you flip that seat up, and it plugs in. And the outlets are right up there by the door.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about that?
I'm going to answer any questions you have, Mr. Waters.
Oh, well, I appreciate all that information in great detail.
Judge, you have a comment.
Sustained.
All right.
It's just never parked that way by the family.
Now the computer back, please. What's up? Mr. Murdoch, I'm going to put up the second interview. This would have been June the 10th. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I do want to go through a couple of things with you, okay?
Anything you want to go through, Mr. Waters?
For the record, I'm going to start it.
I forget the guy's name.
I'm going to start it at 23:55. This is the first interview.
Amy Maggie's been having trouble with her. She's been having trouble with her stomach and her tooth. I'm not positive. It was sort of a routine visit, and I can't remember. She told me the name of him, and I can't. I want to say Gordine is who I think she saw.
So was she back home around supper time? Or 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
I don't think she got back quite that early. I think she got back a little bit later than that.
Okay. What did you do today? Were you at the office or?
No, I was home. I came home, Paul and I messed around. I was up at the house. I laid down, took a nap on the couch, probably, I don't know, 25, 30.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I called Maggie, didn't get an answer, and I left to go to my mom's. She had said she might ride with me, but she normally doesn't when I go over there. And I think I texted her.
There, when you repeated the lie that you decided?
Was that the moment that I decided
you decided to lie to mean old Dave Owen?
I don't know, as I told you, Mr. Waters, the exact moment that I decided to lie, but at that point in time.
But you did lie there, correct?
I did.
And she's very good about answering the phone, so that was odd, or calling me back. So that was odd, but it wasn't that big a deal.
All right, I'm going to go to the second interview. It's been previously admitted. Let me ask you this before we start. You stated earlier during your direct testimony that after these crimes happened, you were around family was around you, your law partners were around you pretty much every minute after that, correct? Every waking minute. Didn't you say that yesterday?
Yes, they were for a long time.
All right. And this second interview was 3 days later, is that right?
That's correct.
And in no time with any of your close friends and law partners and family do you confess the truth? Do you?
No, I did not.
Do you say, hey man, I think I messed up. What should I do about this?
No, I didn't.
You're not telling that lie to anyone, are you? Until yesterday.
Excuse me?
You're not telling that lie to anyone until yesterday, are you?
Not telling what lie? Saying I tried to tell somebody that I was lying?
All right.
Red thing getting
All right. Correction, I'm at 1228.
him, he doesn't like to go to doctors, making him go get his blood pressure checked. His feet had swollen up recently.
Wow.
So, it was a big, huge deal.
Okay.
We hung around the house for a little while. I know that Maggie went to the kennels. I don't know exactly where Paul went, but he left the house too.
Okay. How did Maggie get down to the kennels?
I don't know exactly. But on normal occasions, she would drive a buggy, drive a four-wheeler, or very common for her to walk.
Okay. How about Paul?
Paul wasn't much of a walker, but he would use all of the others.
Okay.
But it could be anyway, I don't know exactly. I wish I could help you with that.
So they left and went down to the kennels.
Well, Maggie went to go to the kennels.
Okay. And Paul left.
And I'm assuming, Paul left because of,
Gotcha.
what happened. I'm assuming Paul went to the kennels.
Okay. And what did you do once Maggie and Paul left?
I stayed in the house.
Okay.
And I was watching TV, looking at my phone, and I actually fell asleep on the couch.
Okay. And what time did you?
I don't know exactly what time I woke up, but when y'all get my phone, I think one of the first things I did when I got up was call Maggie because I was going to my mom's. And I know I texted her because I checked my phone. And what time did we say the text was, Jim? Like 9:06.
I didn't see it. Yeah, I got it written down for me.
I showed you the other night, didn't I?
Yes, sir. I got this.
So, I texted her. So I called her just before that. And, she didn't answer at that point. And I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
Y'all just have to look. I'm not sure if I called Paul.
Well, and that's why we're getting phones so we can nail down the times and everything.
Pretty much all of that was lies, wasn't it?
The part about me not being at the kennel was a lie.
Well, also not knowing that Paul went down there, not being sure, that was a lie too, wasn't it? You're putting some detail on this thing, aren't you?
Not knowing when Paul left. Everything about me not going to the kennel was a lie.
And you're able to just do that so easily and so convincingly and so naturally, don't you?
That's not for me to judge.
That's true.
It's an odd story.
I can get to where I'm going.
Feel right now.
So do y'all have any good clues?
So we're trying to put a rush on that to get an answer quick, and hoping that's going to tell us something.
By Evans, is it things you think are going to be helpful?
Well, I mean, the shot shells out there, the casings, the DNA swabs that we took from the door handle to see if anybody touched the door handles, any other places that we think somebody may have touched while they were out there. We're trying to collect DNA from that and analyze that. Which at the conclusion of this, what I also ask is that we get a buccal swab, the DNA swab from you. Your DNA is going to be there, but we need to eliminate it once it's developed. So we don't need
that unknown
yeah.
when it actually is a family member.
I mean, we have talked to close to 100 people trying to track people down, and we're still tracking people down. And that's why, who Paul was with.
I want to tell you one thing while I'm thinking about it. Yeah. Paul was really an incredibly intuitive little dude.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, he was like a little detective.
He was like a little detective. Is that what you said?
This is what I said. And he was very intuitive, like I said.
And that was what Marion described as Maggie's term for how he was and keeping tabs on your pill usage. Wasn't that correct?
That was what Maggie said about him.
For some reason, you decided to bring that up in this interview, didn't you?
That was a trait of Paul's personality. I mean, I think anybody who knew him would tell you how intuitive he was.
All right. For the record, I'm at 4630.
Well, thank you very much.
So, Mr. Allen,
you don't have to call me Miss. You just call me July. Thank you for that.
when you and Paul got back to the house, Miss Maggie's there, and y'all ate supper, which has been prepared. And you said you laid down and took a little nap, and when you got up, Maggie and Paul was gone, or did they leave when you laid down?
I believe that I'm not sure.
But they weren't there when you woke up around the 9 o'clock mark or so when you made your call to Maggie to let her know you told you.
No. Nobody was in that house when I left.
So, and just trying to narrow that, the last time that you saw Paul and Maggie when y'all were eating supper.
Yes, sir.
Nothing.
Your answer was yes, sir. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So Waters by this point had to be thinking, unless he majorly fucks up, he's got Alex dead to rights on this whole deal. So he decides to transition to the financial aspects of his crimes, and Alex's accomplices.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
To those crimes specifically. He focuses on Alex's friend at Palmetto State Bank, where he got the majority of his loans. So listen to just how masterful Creighton Waters handles this aspect of the testimony and Alex's sorry-ass excuses for why he did what he did as it relates to those financial crimes. You're also going to hear him ask Alec about Alex's theory of unknown assailants as the persons being responsible for these murders at Moselle. And here's that.
About to go to the August 2021 interview, but between that June 10th interview and the August interview, you were not working very much. Is that correct? If at all?
No, I definitely wasn't working very much. I think I was working a little bit, but no, not very much at all.
Did you go to Johnny Parker to borrow $250,000 in order to cover the Ferris fees?
I did.
You did?
I did.
Did you tell him what that was for?
No, I did not tell him what that was for.
Did you go to Russell Lafitte at Palmetto State Bank and get $350,000 in order to help cover some of the Ferris fees that you had taken to send to Chris Wilson?
I did.
And did you get those fees before you signed any paperwork or documentation?
I've heard testimony about that in this case, but I can't tell you the specifics of that.
Okay. You don't recall that?
Do I recall when I signed paperwork? No, sir.
You don't recall that you got the money a month before you had to sign any paperwork?
No, sir, I don't recall that.
Recall your phone being in the console, which
I'm not disputing that, but I don't recall it.
All right. Did you go to your best friend Chris Wilson and convince him to cover $192,000, the remaining $190,000, in order for him to send that email to your law firm as if those fees had been there all along?
I spoke to Chris Wilson and did not have the full amount of the fees, and I got Chris Wilson to put the remaining fees in his trust account.
And when you did that, you didn't tell him the truth about your life. You just asked him to cover you, correct?
No, I didn't. I did not tell him.
And he agreed to do that because of his belief of who you really were, or who he thought you were.
He agreed to do that for whatever reasons. I assume that was a big part of it.
And once that $600,000 was transferred, Chris Wilson sent an email to you saying those fees had been there, were in his trust account, correct?
That is correct.
And then you forwarded that email to Lee Cope and Jeannie Seconder, correct?
I know I forwarded it to Jeannie, and I've heard that testimony about forwarding it to Lee Cope, so I believe that's correct.
Okay. Why'd you not get it all from PSB?
Because at that time, there were limitations on how much I could borrow because Mags was passed. And so I was limited. I couldn't get a loan against Moselle and had to get a loan against Palmetto State. Against Edisto.
Go on to the third interview. All right, I'm going to go to 1745. Jury's seen this, so, again, you repeated the same lies over and over again?
I did.
Effortlessly and convincingly?
I don't know about that.
Well, they can see it there.
Agree with that.
Nobody yelled at you?
Nobody yelled at me. None of these guys were ever discourteous to me.
Nobody what?
I said none of those guys were ever discourteous to me.
Okay.
You made a comment earlier that David Owens was mean or something about being mean, and he was never mean to me.
Mm-hmm. All right. But you decided to lie in part because you distrusted David Owen.
I distrusted SLED in general, and I particularly distrusted who I thought was David Owen at the time.
Okay.
Who turned out not to be David Owen.
So, wait a minute. I want to be clear. You're saying now you thought that this was some David Owen that had something to do with Greg Alexander 10 years ago.
No, sir. And I'm not saying that now. I said that all along. The person that I saw and watched in Greg Alexander's trial that was clear to me was just, it was terrible what they did to Greg Alexander. And the person at SLED who was responsible for that was a guy named David. Mm-hmm. All right, and I'm not even getting into his last name. I thought that David Owens that night was that guy. Later, down the road, and it was a while, I checked into that, and I found out that I was mistaken, that it was not David Owens.
So when we went back and we spent a lot of time going through that first statement, you're telling me now that you were sitting there thinking that this was a completely different guy the whole time, and that was on your mind during that entire interview.
Yes, at the time, I thought that David Owen, no, I didn't think David Owen was a different person. I thought that David Owens was the person that my dad and I had watched. Mm-hmm. My dad and I truly thought evidence was manufactured, and I thought it was David Owen, and I was wrong about that. Okay. But that's what I thought that night.
Any other factors or details you want to add about your decision?
I want to answer any question you have, Mr. Waters.
Any more?
Do you have any more questions, sir?
No, I mean any more about your decision to lie. I mean, I just want to, let's get it all out now.
If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, sir.
All right, well, I do. Tell me about the replacement blackout. You initially told law enforcement that you weren't sure whether or not there was one, correct?
Oh, no, sir. You're absolutely wrong about that.
Mm-hmm. What did you say then?
Shortly after this, it became being told that Paul's gun had been stolen. Mm-hmm. And the one you heard talk about being stolen from the thing. And I'm not sure how I learned this, but I learned that somebody, I believe SLED had gone to John Bedingfield, who made those guns, and could only find paperwork for 2 blackouts, one of which they were saying was stolen in 17. And that's what they were telling me. And I was certain and told them that I was certain that there was a third one.
But initially, in June 8th and June 10th, or June 10th, you were saying that you thought that y'all had replaced it, and then you kind of wavered and then eventually said you did replace it, correct?
I don't believe that's correct. No, sir.
Believe that's correct?
No, I don't believe that's
correct. Did you
correct.
say to law enforcement that you thought that the third gun, the replacement blackout, had gone missing in Christmas of 2020?
It did go missing in Christmas of 2020.
So you're telling them that one also had been missing 6 months prior, correct? Answer my question first, and then you can explain. Did you all tell law enforcement that that gun had been missing since Christmas time?
I told law enforcement that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we could not find it.
Okay.
And that was accurate. We looked for it when we were trying to shoot hogs, when we had a group of people out there, and we could not find it.
Okay. But you now know that it was there as late as turkey season.
No, sir. I know that Will Lovin and Paw had it right before turkey season, like Will Lovin testified to.
Okay. So it was around, actually.
It was around there at some point in time there, yes, sir.
So you're saying it got stolen a second time, or you just don't know?
No, I'm not.
The 12-year-old stole it a second time?
I never said a 12-year-old stole any gun, Mr.
Sorry, the
Warner.
5'2" people stole it a second time?
I don't know.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
That it was stolen. I just know that when we looked for it at Christmas time, we couldn't find it. And I know this. I know that I hadn't seen that gun in a long time. I've heard the testimony that people who were at my house using guns and hunting with us all the time, Rogan, Buster, they didn't, I can't remember about Buster, but there were several people who didn't even know that gun had been replaced. So that tells me that that gun did not stay where our regular guns were. And I know that I didn't see it there, and that tells me that they didn't see it there.
Of course you didn't see it there, because it's got to be missing, right, Mr. Murdoch?
Ask that question
one more
again.
circumstance for your latest story to work is that it's got to be missing as well. It was when you told law enforcement it was missing at Christmas time. Now we've had testimony at this trial, and now you're still claiming that you never saw it. It must have been kept somewhere else. Where else would it have been kept?
It could have been kept anywhere, Mr. Waters, the way Paul did guns, the way guns were handled around there. I was terrible about that.
You're terrible about that.
I should have been stricter.
But you know that that third gun was fired right outside the gunroom door in turkey season of 2021, correct?
I know that now, based on what Will Lovin said.
And you know it was also fired across the street at y'all's shooting house around that same time, don't you?
No, sir, I don't know that, but I know that I would assume that it was fired at the shooting range, but I don't have any reason to believe it was done in close proximity to that time.
A few months go by, a couple months go by, and you get confronted about your thefts from the law firm, correct?
September of 21.
And unlike June the 7th, when Jeannie confronted you, this time they had unassailable evidence, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they had...
No wiggling out of this one, correct?
I didn't try to wiggle out of this one.
Well, you've been wiggling before, though, right? You wiggled when you stole your brother's money twice, correct?
Well, I admit almost all of these things, Mr. Waters, but that's one of the things that I take dispute with.
Which one?
That I stole that money that you're referring to.
You're going to dispute that? Let's hear about that then. Tell me why you dispute cashing that check twice.
I don't dispute cashing that check twice.
But you're going to tell this jury that you accidentally didn't realize that you were supposed to be receiving some $125,000 check, or $120,000 check, 2 times. How many $120,000 checks do you receive?
I got that check, and this is several months after. I mean, you can look at my finances, and you can see how I was doing. I didn't balance a checkbook, but the fact of the matter is, when I got that check, I asked about it, and I was told mistakenly that it was for me, that I had participated in that year-end thing, which I did sometimes, not often, but sometimes. Apparently, a new check got cashed. I cashed that check. Then a year later...
Yeah, where did you keep that one for a year?
I don't know where it was. It was obviously in my desk. But, Mr. Waters...
So you found it in your desk?
No, I didn't find it.
Well, you say it was obviously in your desk. So you remember that? You remember finding it in your desk?
No, I remember when we...
Did you go to finance and say, I just found this year-old check? Is this right?
No.
No, you took it to the bank, didn't you?
No, sir. I didn't.
Not allowing Mr. Murdoch to answer the question.
So when this came up, when this came up, that check got cashed. There's no way that I can have a check in our law firm with the way accounting is, and that I can cash a check twice and think that's impossible. So to cash a check that's already been checked, there's no question it's going to throw that off. What happened is we used to get a rent check, we get little checks, I'd have checks, and they pile up the small checks. That check got mixed in, and it got sent to the bank, and it got deposited.
Keep going.
And that was a year after.
Okay.
But I do dispute that I stole that money. That money.
All right. Well, I mean, you brought it up. So any of the other money you dispute stealing?
No, sir, you brought it up. I was just telling you that was the one I disputed.
Okay. All right. And you heard Ronnie Crosby and Mark Ball testify about that, correct?
I heard Ronnie and Mark testify about what they thought about it. Yes, sir.
You testified yesterday about the side of the road?
Yeah, yes, sir.
And then you heard the testimony during the state's direct case about what you said on the 911 call? You heard that, didn't you?
I did hear that.
You heard the 911 call where you said you'd been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you saw the video from the ambulance where you said you'd been attacked by an unknown assailant and described him?
I did.
And you heard the testimony from Ryan Kelly where you, again, went into detail and described this attack from an unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony about your interview on September 6th with law enforcement, in which you went into great detail and, again, described this unknown assailant?
I did.
And you heard the testimony, and in fact, the image was put in about how you sat down with a SLED sketch artist and spent a period of time with her going forward and creating an image of the supposed assailant.
I did sit down with her. I was in the hospital, and they came in, sat down with me, asked me a bunch of questions. I answered their questions, and
yes, you did. You sat there.
It came up with a composite. Yes, sir.
Sat there and answered their questions just as effortlessly and convincingly as you've been trying to do for the past 2 days. Isn't that correct?
No, sir. That's not true. In that hospital, I mean, I couldn't sit still. I was standing up. I was walking around. I was using the bathroom with the lady sitting right there. I was 2 days into not taking, 3 days into not taking pills like I had been. So, no, it wasn't effortlessly. But, I mean, I told him what I told him. I don't dispute that I lied.
It was all lies, though, is the point, correct?
It was.
I mean, you're saying withdrawals, but you still were able to pull off lies in great detail. Correct?
I lied to them.
And the lie that you told of an unknown assailant was to try to make people think that the, quote, real bad guys were back again to finish the job. Isn't that true?
No, sir, that's not true.
That's not the effect that you intended that story to have? Did it have that effect on people that you knew? Isn't that the exact effect that it had?
I don't think there's many people that believe that. No, sir. I know the people that were, I mean, the people that were closest to me didn't believe that. So, no, sir.
Accountability is at your door, Mr. Murdoch. Bad things happen. Isn't that true?
When accountability is at my doorstep,
go ahead.
Bad things happen. What do you mean by bad things?
June 7th happened. September 4th happened.
I don't believe that June the 7th happened because accountability issues were at my doorstep. Now, I do believe in September that I tried to get a man to help me kill myself because issues were at my doorstep.
Every time, or I'm sorry, for the first time in your life of privilege and prominence and wealth, when you were facing accountability, each time, suddenly, you became a victim and everyone.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Ran to your aid. Isn't that true?
I disagree with that, but I mean, what you're
shame for you is an extraordinary provocation. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdoch?
Hang on, let me just finish this. You seem to be implying two dates, June the 7th and September, and talking about accountability issues. And I mean, those two things are totally different. There were no accountability issues on my doorstep on June the 7th.
That's what you say.
And in September,
not what other people say.
I was trying to, well, no, I mean, been a lot of people, in September, that wasn't designed to gain me sympathy. That was designed for me not to be here because I didn't want my son to have to deal with the wake of the things that I had done.
But that's not the story you told. The story that came out of your mouth right away was the story of you getting attacked by some unknown assailant while you were trying to change a tire in run flats.
Well,
that's the story that you told.
That is the story I told, but that's because the man who shot me did not shoot me that day as I intended, and I had to have a story as to how I got shot, so I lied.
So you lied. And you're saying that people in your family and your friends didn't instantly believe that whoever these 12-year-old marauders were back to finish the job.
You keep using
and it happened just 2 hours after you had been confronted by Chris Wilson.
I think probably some people may have thought that when it first happened, but I think like Randy, Ronnie, Mark, those guys, I think they knew very quickly that this was not I think they knew this was something that I'd done.
Shame for you, I asked this before, but shame for you is an extraordinary provocation, isn't it, Mr. Murdoch?
Shame for me is an extraordinary provocation. I don't like to be shamed.
The prospect of humiliating the legacy is an extraordinary provocation to you, isn't it, Mr. Murdoch?
What do you mean by an extraordinary provocation?
It affects you deeply. It's your biggest concern, is it not?
No, that's not my biggest concern.
You're a middle-aged man like me?
I'm 54 years old. I'm not sure. You look like you're in better shape than me, so I don't know.
I was actually a couple of years behind you in law school, but we never knew each other, did we?
I never knew you, no, sir.
Had a very successful career up until this point?
You know,
simple question.
And the answer to that is no, Mr. Waters. I was an addict for more than 20 years.
All right, so making millions of dollars over a decade is not having a successful career? Is that what you're going to tell the jury?
No, that's not a successful career. When you
Okay, well, let me put it like this.
Hang on. Let me just...
All right, go ahead.
You know, it may have been what you perceive as a successful career, but, you know, I was the one who was fighting that. You don't have a very high self-esteem when you're an addict. So I don't deem myself a success.
Would you agree that at least outwardly you were perceived as successful?
I made a bunch of money, if that's what you're wanting to get at.
No, I'm actually asking about the perception. You were perceived as a prominent,
powerful
lawyer.
How I was perceived,
You were president
I don't
of the
know.
trial lawyers.
I sure tried to be.
You lived a life of possessing authority.
Possessing authority?
Yeah, we saw the badges. You just admitted of your prominence in the legal community.
I don't think that I lived a life of possessing authority. I never saw myself as that way.
You don't think you lived a life of privilege?
I think I was very privileged.
And as we move to June of 2021, you were suffering from a drug addiction.
Absolutely.
Your father was terminally ill.
When?
As we move to June of 2021.
No, sir.
He was very ill.
He was very ill.
And you were coming to a point of financial crisis.
I was having financial issues like I'd had many times in the past.
Mr. Murdoch, are you a family annihilator?
A family annihilator? You mean like, did I shoot my wife and my son?
Yes.
No. I would never hurt Maggie Murdaugh. I would never hurt Paul Murdoch under any circumstances.
Say that.
Excuse me?
You say that, but you lied to Maggie, didn't you?
I did lie to Maggie.
You lied to Paul?
Sometimes.
You lied to your father?
I'm sure I did at some point.
Did you tell him all the stuff you'd been up to over the years before he died?
No, I didn't tell him.
Did you lie to your brothers?
About financial things?
Yes.
I would have lied to Randy at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to him about the last time you saw your wife and son alive?
I did.
Did you lie to their wives?
I'm sure I did.
Did you lie to Marion Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to Bart Proctor?
Yes.
Did you lie to the Brandstetters?
Yes.
Did you lie to your best friend, Chris Wilson?
Probably.
Did you lie to your other friend, Barrett Bulware, when you took his money?
No, sir.
No.
I didn't lie like I told you. I didn't lie directly to him. I lied to him by omission like we talked about. I mean, I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him at that time.
Did you lie to your law partners?
I did.
Did you lie to him about the kennels?
Some of them.
Did you lie to Mark Ball?
Yeah, based on what Mark said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Ronnie Crosby?
According to what he said, I believe I did.
Did you lie to Johnny Parker?
I don't believe I ever discussed that with Johnny.
Did you lie to him about the finances when you borrowed that money in July of 2021?
I don't know if I lied to him about. I don't think Johnny asked me. I don't think I had to lie to Johnny about that, so I don't know.
Did you lie? Well, you certainly didn't disclose to him the truth when you borrowed that $250,000, did you?
I did not tell him what I was going to use it for.
I mean, didn't we say before that not telling the whole truth is the same as telling a lie?
Sure it is.
You don't think that's a lie, though?
I'm just saying, Mr. Waters, I'm not taking issue with that, but I don't even know that Johnny and I mean, Johnny had loaned me money numerous times. It wasn't any long sit-down discussion where Johnny wanted to know exactly what I was doing with it. That conversation would have been, I needed it. Johnny was always willing to help me, and that would have been the conversation. So on that specific event, did I lie to him? I don't know.
Yeah, he ended up being out $477,000, didn't he?
He ended up being out a lot of money.
And thank you for your qualifications as to that. Did you lie to Lee Cope?
I don't know. I don't know if Lee Cope was around when I said that or not.
Did you lie to Danny Henderson?
I did lie to Danny.
Did you lie to Jeannie Seckinger?
About finances, yes, I did.
You didn't ever talk to her about the kennels?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Did you lie to Annette Griswold?
I did.
Did you lie to Christy Gerald, your other secretary or paralegal?
I don't believe she and I discussed. I would have at some point, I'm sure.
Did you lie to Michael Gunn?
I'm sure I did at some point, but I mean, Michael wasn't involved in any of this, so I don't know.
Looking for excitement? Chumba Casino is here. Play anytime, play anywhere. Play on the train, play at the store, play at home, play when you're bored. Play today for your chance to win and get daily bonuses when you log in. So what are you waiting for? Don't delay. Chumba Casino is free to play.
Experience social gameplay like never before. Go to Chumba Casino right now to play hundreds of games, including online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Live the Chumba life at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
That any of this ever came up with Michael.
Did you lie to your clients? Did you lie to Pamela Pinckney?
I did.
Natasha Thomas?
I don't know that I dealt with Natasha, but I certainly lied about that.
Hakeem Pinckney?
Again, I don't know that I talked to Hakeem, but I certainly lied about that.
Arthur Badger?
I did.
The Plyler girls?
I'm not sure that I talked specifically to them, but I lied about that.
Dion Martin?
I lied to Dion.
Johnny Bush?
Yes.
Manuel Cristiani?
I didn't have any conversations with him, but I certainly lied about it.
Jamie and Risher?
Yes.
Randy Drawdy?
Yes.
Jordan Jenks?
Yes.
Mary Duncan?
Yes.
Adriana Hay?
Yes.
Angel Gary?
Yes.
Christopher Anderson?
Yes.
Elise Mallory?
Yes.
Thomas Moore?
No.
You never lied to him? You just took his money. You never had to actually lie to his face, is what you're saying?
He and I never had a conversation, but I did take that. I did take that money.
Did you lie to Tony Satterfield just a couple of months before June 7th? We saw the text. You want me to get it out?
Just remind me. There's been a lot. Just remind me what it was.
I'll show you what's been marked as 463.
And I don't remember the exact date. So
that was in April of 2021. Was that right? Where you text him and tell him how hard you're working on the case when in fact you had stolen millions of dollars from him? Tony Satterfield, who got up on the stand and told the jury about that?
I texted him on April 12th, so 5 weeks before June 7th.
Told him everything was okay. You're working hard, right? It's a complex case.
Yeah, I told him I was working on the case.
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria.
I'm sorry?
He was the son of your longtime housekeeper, Gloria, who had served your family for many years.
That's correct.
And you stole millions from those boys.
I stole those funds.
And he and his family had started asking questions as we moved to June 7th. Didn't that happen?
No, I mean, there wasn't any rise in them asking questions. No, sir. I mean, he periodically checked in and asked me questions, but, you know, it had come out long before this, I believe, in the Island packet, that there had been a settlement of $500,000. But, I mean, that had been months and months, if I'm not mistaken. And so I didn't notice any uptick in Tony asking questions, and I don't believe that there was any uptick in Tony asking questions before June the 7th.
So you just gratuitously out of the blue decided to lie to him and send that text? Or were there things going on externally that caused you to need to head him off at the pass before further questions started to be asked about money you couldn't pay back at that point in time?
Nah, I don't think there was anything. I mean, on April 21st, I don't know what external factors you're talking about.
Do you want to explain that one anymore?
Explain what?
Whatever you want.
I just want to answer your questions, Mr. Waters.
Lied to everyone about the side of the road, that people that came to stop to help, and the ambulance folks, and the 911, and Ryan Kelly, and the composite sketch artist, and all of them, correct?
I lied to a lot of people about that.
You know why people lie, Mr. Murdoch? Because they know they've done something wrong.
For the most time, I do.
And you've been able to lie quickly and easily and convincingly if you think it'll save your skin for well over a decade. Isn't that true?
I have lied well over a decade.
And you want this jury to believe a story manufactured to fit the evidence that you brought forth just yesterday after hearing this trial's worth of testimony.
No, sir, that's not correct.
Mr. Murdoch, we went through this for a while, but you remember at the beginning of your testimony, I asked you whether or not you agreed that trying to explain your presence on the kennel video was the most important part of your testimony before this jury. You remember that? And you said, oh, not the most important. And I said, was it at least important? You recall that from yesterday?
I recall you asking those questions, yes, sir.
And you agree it's important, don't you?
I agree that is an important component. But I think there's a lot of important components.
And you testified yesterday and during cross yesterday and cross today. It's kind of evolved on the fact of the factors that led you to decide to lie at some point during that interview with David Owen, correct?
I disagree with that. I don't think those factors have evolved. I mean, you've asked some more specific questions, but those factors are still the same factors. You may have asked questions and gained a little more detail, but those factors haven't changed.
But it was the dope paranoia. It was the fact that the deputy took your GSR. It was the fact that your law partners and Greg Alexander and the sheriff were telling you needed to have a lawyer before you talked to police. It was the factor that you got in the car with Dave Owen and thought he was somebody else from some case 10 years ago, correct?
That believing David Owens was the person involved in the case that I talked about was one of the factors that caused me to distrust SLED.
All right. And then also you said that they started asking you about, in that first interview, about your relationship with Maggie and Paul. And that's one thing you mentioned as well, correct?
And that was certainly something that contributed to me having paranoid thinking.
For the record, I'm playing the Daniel Green body cam video, 2026.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
The police are here now. The police are here now. There's no problem.
Okay. When was the last time you were here with them? Or talked to them or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but
Okay.
I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
That was Sergeant Green, correct?
Yeah, that was Sergeant Green.
And at that point in time, SLED was not there. No one had gotten GSR from you. Your law partners or Sheriff Hill were not there.
That's correct.
No one had asked you about your relationships. David Owen was not there.
That's correct.
But you still told the same lie. And all those reasons that you just gave this jury about the most important part of your testimony was a lie too. Isn't that true, Mr. Murdoch?
I disagree with that.
Nothing further.
I fucking love that.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
What a way to end your questioning. Now, at this point, the defense rebuttals, and they focus on a couple of things with regard to Alex's movements and the roadside shooting and what Alex's intent was. And here's that.
This is in evidence. And this is Agent Rudowski's timeline. It says Maggie Murdaugh's phone, iPhone shows 59 steps traveled between 8:53:15 and 8:55:32. Were you walking with Maggie Murdaugh's phone during that period of time?
I wasn't walking with Maggie's phone any time that night.
And if you'll look at Agent Rudowski's entries, is there entry of her phone showing steps during any time between 9:02 and 9:06? You see any on this page? From 8:53 to 8:55.
No, sir.
If you'll turn the next page, page 46. Going down to your steps. Is there any recording of phone steps, phone recording steps, according to the data we now have for Maggie's phone at any point in time up to 9:02?
No, sir.
And had you repeatedly asked SLED to get the data from the OnStar, from the cell phones, to evaluate whether your phone and Maggie's phone were ever moving at the same time? You made that multiple requests.
I repeatedly asked David Owens about that information.
And when you asked that question, were you aware that Maggie's phone had been located, down the road, half a mile or more? Is that right?
Yeah, I knew where her phone had been located.
And why was it important to you to get that information?
Because I knew that whoever had done this to them had Maggie's phone. And I knew that my phone and Maggie's phone and my car were never together. At any point in time.
Sure. Now, you have given inaccurate times in many statements to law enforcement in this case, have you not?
I did.
And we reviewed some of those in your direct examination. One was Paul getting to Moselle around 5 p.m. Do you remember that?
I do.
Were you lying to Agent Owens or anybody when you said Paul got there at 5 p.m.?
No, I wasn't lying to him. I thought that at the time.
And when you...
most of the times a lot of the times when I gave times, I qualified them and say, but You can look at this. I pointed him to my office, to the call log, to the key card like we talked about, or my phone, or my own star.
And when you told the agents that you thought you got to the office 8:30, 9 o'clock on that morning of June 7th, well, you were wrong, right?
I was wrong.
Were you lying?
No, I wasn't lying.
And when Deputy Green drove up and you had your first encounter with him, I believe you told him that you had been gone to your mom's house for an hour and a half. Is that right? We just heard it.
The last one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hour and a half. I think that is what I told him.
Hour and a half. And that the last time you saw Maggie and Paul was 45 minutes before that.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And when you spoke to Deputy Green, it was about, I think the records show they didn't arrive on the scene until 10:22 or something like that. Is that right?
That sounds right. I mean, I think that's what the records show. That sounds right.
And that, were you lying to Deputy Green when you told him what time, how long you thought you'd been at your mother's and the last time you saw Maggie and Paul?
No, sir. I wasn't lying to him.
Were you trying to mislead him in any way?
No, sir. Not when Mr. Green got there.
Now, you've admitted in the first few questions that I asked you yesterday and multiple times today that you lied to Agent Owen and Deputy Rutland and Agent Owen and Agent Croft, and on a couple occasions about your whereabouts following dinner, correct?
I did lie to them, as we discussed repeatedly.
And you've explained that it was this addiction, opioid-induced paranoia you just couldn't shake. Is that right?
That's right. Like I said, there's certain things, anything, that make you paranoid, but I could get over it really quickly. But that night, I didn't.
And you had a bag of pills in your pocket, did you not?
I did.
And when you got down to the kennels, we're not going to repeat all that, but did you ever see anybody down there, anybody else?
No, there was nobody. There wasn't anybody down there when I was there.
And did you believe that the information, whether you were there or not there, would advance their investigation in any way?
No, I didn't. I didn't think that.
And why didn't you think that?
Because they were fine and doing good when I left there.
On the 911 call, do you remember that the call first went to Hampton?
I don't remember that, but I know that now.
And what we played here in the court in your testimony was the Colleton County handoff. Do you recall that?
I do recall that. I think at some point the part in Hampton might have gotten played too, didn't it? But I know the main part was the Colleton part. But it was like a minute into the call.
But initially it went to Hampton, and then subsequently it was transferred to Colleton.
That's right.
And then a minute or so into the Colleton call, you said, "I've been up to it now." You remember that?
I do remember saying that. I remember hearing it. I don't remember saying that, but I remember hearing it.
Okay.
And that is accurate. And by up to it, at that point, I had gone all the way up to them at that point. When I first got out, I was close, but I wasn't right at them, I don't think.
Right. You were asked about the roadside shooting, and And your intent was to end your life that day, was it not?
It was, no question.
And you were shot but not killed. And then you made up a lie to law enforcement about what happened, right?
That's correct.
Were you trying to protect Curtis Eddie Smith by doing that?
Was I trying to protect Curtis Eddie Smith?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know exactly. It all had to come together so quick. I don't know that I was trying to protect Curtis Eddie Smith.
Okay.
I may have been, but it was just, I wasn't supposed to be there. And then I was.
When you say I wasn't supposed to be there, what do you mean by that?
I intended for him to, I intended to be gone. I intended for him to shoot me, and I intended to be gone. And the one thing, my main concern at that point was that I did not want Buster. I did not want Buster knowing that I had tried to do that.
Okay.
That was my motivation in telling that story.
I see. Did you eventually voluntarily convey to Agent Kelly and others that was a fabrication?
I did. After, I don't know, a few days in detox, when I finally got over those initial, just where I could function, I think I told you first, then I think I told Buster, then I think I told Randy and John, and y'all arranged either the next day or 2 days later to come, and we called Ryan Kelly.
Alec, you've lied to your family over many years, have you not?
I lied to my family about my addiction.
And you hid from them you were stealing client money, did you not?
Oh, I never. They didn't know anything about that.
And you've lied to your law partners about financial dealings and perhaps your addiction?
Yes.
And you've lied to law enforcement about not going down to the kennels after dinner, but eating dinner and taking a nap. Did you not?
I did.
All right.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Right here. Turn up those speakers. Right here. The defense asked the question we all want to know by this point directly to Alex Murdaugh's face.
Alec, did you murder Maggie?
I would never hurt Maggie.
Did you murder Paul?
I would never hurt Paul. If I was under the pressure that they're talking about here, I can promise you I would hurt myself before I would hurt one of them. Without a doubt.
Thank you. That's all the questions I'm going to
Well, what do you think? Did he sound convincing? But Waters wasn't quite done with Alec. He provides his own rebuttal with this.
You said that you were concerned when you talked to David Owen about the bag of pills in your pocket, correct?
I mean, no, sir, I'm not saying that I was concerned about that. I don't think I told you I was concerned about that. I'm just telling you that was a fact. I had a bag of pills in my pocket, and that was one of the things, that was one of the many things that came together that night.
And you're trying to tell this jury that as a reasonable husband and father in this situation, concern about a bag of pills in your pocket was more important to you than telling law enforcement and narrowing the time when you last saw your wife and son alive. That's what you want to convince this jury of?
No, sir, because, I mean, the bag of pills in my pocket was not what I was concerned about sitting in there. It was, as I said, it was one of the many things that was going on. But I wasn't sitting there worried about those pills in my pocket.
You were asked about requesting the phone and automobile data, and that was because as a prosecutor and a lawyer, you had been manufacturing an alibi to cover your tracks.
No, sir, that's absolutely wrong.
You admit you were wrong about a lot of things in what you told law enforcement about June 7th, correct?
I was wrong about things. Some things.
You were asked whether or not you voluntarily confessed to Agent Kelly, but you only did so after being confronted with undeniable information. Correct?
No, sir, that's not correct at all. What I was told is that, and I believe this came from Randy, what I was told is that SLED had come up with some information that seemed like it was consistent with my story, and they needed me to verify some things, is what they told me. And, you know, I knew that resources had already been wasted. I didn't want them wasting any more resources, and I told them the truth, but there wasn't any, nobody had presented me with any evidence.
And you just testified that you told Jim Griffin first, correct?
I believe that I told Jim Griffin first.
But at that time, you didn't say anything about those kennels, did you?
To Jim Griffin? At that time, no, sir, I didn't.
When you testified on direct yesterday, and you were asked about leaving the kennels with your new story, in light of the evidence that's been presented in this trial, your words were, "I got out of there," correct?
I believe that's what I said, yes, sir.
And you also said during your testimony on cross-examination that you hurt the ones you love the most, didn't you?
I did say that.
Thank you. Nothing further.
In saying that, Mr. Waters, I just want to explain that answer. I mean, he just asked me a question about what I said, and then I was going to explain why I said it.
All right.
As I told you earlier, you're implying to this jury and to me that was me talking about hurting Maggie and Paul. And that's not what that was. What that was is me saying, I know I hurt my brother, my partners, my clients, many of whom I told you I loved, all of whom I cared for. And that's what that was when I'm talking about how my misdeeds, how I hurt the people worst were the ones I loved the most.
I just asked you what you said, correct, Mr. Murdoch?
You did ask me what I said, but in asking me that, you're putting an implication on there that I am explaining.
I just asked you what you said.
Okay, yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Wow. In my opinion, Murdaugh just got decimated by Creighton Waters, and I personally loved it. Hey, thank you so much for hanging in there with me on this one. I know it was a long episode, but I didn't want to drag out this series any further than I have to, and we still got a ways to go yet. My goal is to complete this one in 30 episodes. We're on 22 now, so we're getting close. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.